Hello and welcome to the Godless Moms podcast, where we talk atheist parenting and all other kinds of advice that you might be looking for, suggestions for how to live a secular life and raise your kids without religion.
Amen.
Next to me is Janice Selby. You know her as Wise Counselor or Divorce Religion on Twitter.
Mhm.
And she is actually quite a wise counselor, which is why it's so great to have her here on the podcast. And just a couple of things before we get started today. I wanted to just mention that the chat on YouTube, the live chat on YouTube and Facebook, is not for debating the existence of God. This is a space where we would like to make it kind of like a safe space for atheists to be atheists, and we welcome believers if you want to come and watch. We're not doing the debate thing in the chat, and if you do that, we will definitely send you on your way. We don't like doing that, so just don't do it. And the second little piece of news that we have is that we now have t-shirts, and
Yay!
I'm going to order a couple of samples for me and Janice, so you'll hopefully see us wearing them one day in an episode soon. But if you want to pick up a Godless Moms podcast t-shirt, the link is down in the description on Facebook and on YouTube.
Yes.
So, Janice, how are you doing today?
I have had quite a morning. I've had quite a morning, and in the middle of the morning, I got in my car and drove the 20 minutes to town because I was sure I had an appointment at my bank at 10 o'clock. And then as I'm standing in line, I take out my piece of paper. My appointment is for 3 o'clock. So then I got back in the car and drove the 20 minutes back home. That pretty much encapsulates how my morning has gone today. But now I'm excited because I'm here with you.
Yeah, we had some struggles with the microphone this morning. There's apparently well, one of the things that happened over the week is that we got the audio only versions of our podcast up and out there, except they're not on Apple iTunes yet because or Apple Podcasts yet because Apple takes forever to review the podcast and put it up there. But once it's reviewed, it's fine. It'll go right up as soon as I upload it, but they do have to review it the first time. So we noticed in the process of doing that there were some like pops and clicks on my end, and so we were trying to work that out. We haven't quite figured it out. So I don't know. If anybody watching has pointers, we're open to it. But yeah, that's basically my morning.
Fun times.
Yeah. And this week we wanted to talk about what it's like to have a child who belongs to the LGBTQ plus community coming out and dealing with religious family who may not be supportive.
Mhm.
And did you have a specific question from somebody?
I do have a question here. My teen recently came out to me and my wife as being bisexual. My parents are very religious and will have a big problem with this. I feel like I'm about to get put in the middle of a very heated and sad conflict. My parents know we are not religious, but I'm worried that this will really cause a rift between them and my child. Do you have any advice on how we might proceed with the least drama and fallout possible? That's a tall order. Whenever you throw religion and sexuality into the mix together, things get troubled and troublesome. And it's hard enough figuring out who you are as a young person or as any person really at any age. And I come from a very religious background, from a fundamentalist background, and I know what it's like to suppress my own attractions because I knew from a young age, from about 12 years old, that I was attracted to both genders, to male and female. And um, I never felt like I could really go with it at all because of the heavy religiosity in my home and in my life, the constraints I put on myself. And so I married a fellow, the first fellow that asked me, but I always did have these desires to see what it would be like to relate to another woman in a romantic sense. And really, it wasn't until I was looking at leaving my religion, until I started freeing myself from the shackles of religion, that I allowed myself to see what that would be like and to start spending time with males and females. And I was almost 40 at that time. So for a young person, for a teenager or adolescent, to be able to explore and express that, I think that's tremendous. That's like throw a freaking party. That's amazing. Your kid is figuring things out and they're refusing to be put into a box.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, just being a teenager alone is so difficult. It's like I remember I was, I wasn't experiencing any of those things, but I was definitely like just uncomfortable in my own skin and like
Mm-hmm.
you just question everything that you do. And I hated being a teenager. I'm so
Mm-hmm.
glad I'm not a teenager anymore.
Yep. Oh, hard
But
times, hard enough.
I feel so bad for anybody who has to deal with that, let alone with religious family. We actually have my stepdaughter is she came out to us as bisexual a couple of years ago. It
Mm-hmm.
was it was interesting because she was spending a lot of time with her friend, a girl, and I realized that something was up when she asked me to come downstairs and help her fish a bracelet out of her bathroom sink, and so I pulled it out, and she was like her face was white, and she was
Oh,
just so concerned about this bracelet, and I'm like, "Who gave you the bracelet?" And she said that her friend did, and I was like, that's not a worry about the kind of bracelet that just a friend gives you, right? And
mm-hmm.
so and they had been when I finally asked her, they had been dating for 10 months. Like, I was so oblivious.
It's a long time to keep that secret.
Yeah, and she's not like, she wasn't keeping it secret because she was afraid of our reaction. She knew all along that we would be totally fine with it, and it didn't
Excellent.
bother us at all. But she's just not the type to offer information,
Mm-hmm.
and so you have to kind of pry it from her sometimes. So that's kind of it was interesting, and our reaction was, congratulations, we're so happy for you and stuff like that, because she'd had some struggles with her social life before, and it was just nice to have our daughter just be happy and enjoy somebody else's company. It was a really nice thing to
Yes.
experience.
It's
And
such a trying to really de-shamify sex, any aspects of sex. That's a tall order, but we must keep doing it. We must keep talking about it and shouting about it so that people understand. We refuse to be shamed for our
yeah,
attractions and for anything about sex. We don't we're not all bound by somebody else's belief system. If you don't like homosexuality, then don't have gay sex.
yeah,
Everybody
yeah.
else is allowed to do what they want to do.
It's sad. As a mom, I I come across a lot of people in my day-to-day stuff as
Mm-hmm.
doing the Godless Mom thing. And they will tell me that like they came out to their parents or they were disowned by their family or whatever, and they'll you also know that I work for a nonprofit that helps people who are in danger in places in the world where they're violent over these things. And
Mm-hmm.
some of
Yeah.
those cases that I work on are people who belong to the LGBTQ plus community,
Mm-hmm.
and they are definitely like, some of them have been beaten, some of them have been thrown in jails. It's horrific, and they've been threatened that killed and all of this stuff, and it's horrific. And I just like every single time I talk to somebody like that or I see somebody like that, I just want to put my arms around them and bring them home
Yeah.
and just say, like, it just hurts me so much because I know how lost I was as a teenager, and I can't imagine taking it to that other level where you've got nobody, like the one group of people who's supposed to be your rock, who's supposed to be your foundation and your
Mhm.
safe place. They are the
Mhm.
ones who are attacking you just for who you are. I just can't.
Mhm.
I have so much trouble dealing with that.
Right. And as you were just saying, the actually knowing that you are in physical danger from those same people because you're rejecting their notion of what is acceptable. I do feel in Canada, I can't speak for any place else because I don't live anyplace else, but when I look at my daughters who are in their 20s now, I feel like their peer group is so much more accepting of the
Yeah.
different types of sexuality and sexual attraction. And it's really just not a big deal to them at all. And that is so thrilling and exciting to
Yeah.
me to think that maybe kids won't have to go through what I went through, just completely wrestling with myself and trying to suppress my own desires and inclinations and feeling that I was somehow bad
Yeah.
because I had those desires.
Yeah, I've noticed the same thing like with our daughter, like it was just she didn't have to even come out to her friends.
Mm-hmm.
It's just now I have a girlfriend. That's it. And that's how I've always wanted it to be because like she didn't always live with us, but our for like I always imagined that for my son if he ever had to tell us that he was attracted to men or something like that. I didn't want him to have that coming out. Like to me just the whole act of coming out in itself is silly. It's like I envisioned him coming home saying, "I have a boyfriend." And that's it. And we would react the exact same way we would if he said, "I have a girlfriend." And
Yes.
I didn't like I just think that this whole forcing people to ceremoniously announce what kind of genitalia they like is
Yeah.
just silly. It's and it only happens
Mm-hmm.
to people who are not 100% straight, right? And it's I don't like that. I don't like the fact that people have to do that when I didn't have to. I didn't have to
Mm-hmm.
sit down with my parents at the dinner table and say
Yeah.
I like penis. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Boy. Yeah, it's incredible what some folks do have to go through. And I even think of folks, particularly in religious communities, where they've known since adolescence or younger that they are attracted to their own sex, and yet they feel they have to go along with the prescribed way of doing things, and so they marry, and then maybe
Mhm.
sometimes they even also have kids, but all the while really deeply struggling and knowing that it's not their true identity. There's so much pressure there. And um, then if they are able to gain the courage and support to become who they really are and express themselves as they want to, um, there's so much hardship then that follows in the wake of that. If they've been married to someone for many years who's known them one way, and it can just be really hard then for that person to figure out, well, what's my place in your life now then that you've made this declaration? It's hard on everybody. It's much better if we can be allowed to be ourselves right from the start and just celebrated for who we are.
Yeah, exactly. I think that I don't know. I've never been able to understand it. I even back when I was younger, my best friend told me that she was gay and again I was completely oblivious because apparently everybody knew except me. I mean, the way that I reacted was that like she said honestly like you honestly didn't have any idea and I said no, but I just the way that I operate is I don't think about that stuff. I don't sit around thinking what other people do in their bedroom. It's not she meant just as much to me either way. Nothing
Mm-hmm.
changed between us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and I told her that. And I said it's not my place to until somebody brings that information to me and wants to talk to me about it and opens it up to talk about it. It's not my place to start mulling it over in my head. Like,
Mm,
that's just none of my business.
mm,
That's how I always treated it. And it's funny because my parents never had a conversation about that with me. It's just I witnessed them treat everybody the same way. I witnessed them love everyone equally no matter
mm.
what. And
Beautiful.
that is how I learned to do the same thing. And I think that that's one of the things that you can do for your kids, whether you're worried about them having to come out in the future and what the response might be, or you just want them to be really great people who treat everybody equally. Setting the example is the best way to do it, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And when I think about my own growing up, my mom's pretty chill, and she was, pretty chill even when it came to matters of religion. My dad, completely the opposite of chill, very unchill. And he would be the one that would make very judgmental and harsh comments about, well, really about anyone different, but particularly about people who were gay. So there was no question in my mind that that would not be a safe place to explore or talk about it. No, that in my family of origin, that was not going to happen. However, my own experimentation also came around the time, as I mentioned, that I was letting go of Christianity, and also my marriage was coming to its conclusion, coming to its end as well. Um, and I did talk with my daughters about it. I got to the point where I was in a relationship with another woman, and I was gone a fair amount of time because she lived out of town. Um, and then it just was something I felt that did need to be discussed, and my kids were fine with it. They didn't have a problem with it at all.
Mhm.
And then when another young family member was really struggling with her own attraction to females as well, I was a safe person for her to come out to. And that was so, I'll never forget that. I just felt like I was so glad that I could be there and that she could talk to me. Um, and I asked her if she would she like me to be there when she would talk to her father about it? And she said yes. And so that's how we proceeded with it. And thankfully, it went just beautifully. And her parents they made sure to let her know that they just love her and want her to be happy. And that is such a beautiful way to have the story go. In this note that the writer sent to me, they were really concerned about what's going to happen with the grandparents, because the grandparents are religious, and I'm guessing then the grandparents have played somewhat of a role in the life of this grandchild. Um, and that's a really hard one. So we need to absolutely support our children and let them know that they are fine the way that they are, and that they come first. Our relationship with them comes first. Our parents did their job already. They raised us, we made it safely, whatever, maybe not emotionally safely, but we made it into adulthood. Now we're living our own lives and raising our children. So our children take up that a more important space for us. And so we have to let the kids know that we love and support them. And that might actually mean difficult conversations with our parents to let them know that we won't tolerate them making our child feel less than.
Yeah. Whenever I've had people come to me for advice on similar topics, like how do I deal with my parents with respect to my kids and how they interact, I've always, I always just, I get this feeling from them that they're still kind of seeing themselves as the child,
Mm-hmm.
and their parents are still in charge. And I always try to remind them, like, in this situation, you are the parent. You are making the rules. They have no say. They have no say whatsoever in how you raise your child. They can absolutely 100% express their concerns in a constructive way, and in a way that is respectful, but outside of that, that's it. That's the end of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to, you have to, like, you made a really good point where you have to make sure that your kids understand that they come first before even your parents do, but you also have to, even harder, you have to follow through with that. You have to zero tolerance for them shaming your child for their sexuality, zero tolerance for them creating tension around their sexuality. Like, that is a no go. It's, at least in our house, if anybody in our family had ever done that with our daughter, it would have been, that's it. That's the end
Mm.
of it. You're not going to create, she's got enough on her plate
Mhm.
having to be a teenager in this world and navigate this world. You don't get to create this tension for her around her sexuality. And I
Yes.
think you have to definitely set that boundary.
Absolutely. And the rate of suicide among LGBTQ um, and Two Spirit kids is it is higher than for kids who don't fall into that category. And then it's particularly more difficult when they are in a religious environment. And so then, like me, they're internalizing the things that they've been taught and believing something is fundamentally wrong. They're existing in a state of sin, in a state of being displeasing to God. That's
Yeah.
a heavy burden to put on a child. I do recommend for parents and young people, they can investigate the Trevor Project. Google it online and go there and take a look and find information, and can be a helpful resource for folks who are in this predicament.
Yeah, there's somebody in the chat, Jessica, who has mentioned that that she wants to normalize it within their own family, but doesn't want to pass it down of what's been pathologized in her. And I think that that is a really, really good point. Like, I don't have any experience with that, but I know that it can be very, very difficult to kind of shake the ideas that your parents implant in your head or your family implants in your head. And I imagine it's even harder with religious indoctrination. Did you want to talk about that a little bit?
About moving past the religious
Yeah.
indoctrination. Um, it can be helpful for folks who have been raised in a Christian setting to really take a look at how much Jesus says about homosexuality in the Bible, which is nothing. He does not talk about it. Um, and even understanding some of the how the meanings of words through the years have been changed, and that the Bible isn't an accurate translation. I happen to not believe it's true at all, but so that's one way. But also find your tribe. There are lots of groups of people, people who've left religion, and they're now developing their new secular life. And then, particularly within those groups, there is quite a large subgroup of people who then are questioning what they've been taught about sexuality, and even, am I straight? And maybe I'm only straight because I was forced into that role. And now they're getting to a point where they can start exploring and seeing what that's like. So finding a safe space where you can explore those things, and you want to be careful with that because not everybody is trustworthy, and there can be people in groups who don't deserve to know things about you because they can't be trusted yet. So be wise when you're making disclosures. And this is one thing, of course, that teenagers and adolescents and young people, they can be lacking in because they don't have the life experience that brings the wisdom that says, not everybody needs to know. So your daughter, she showed that she was wise. She hung on to that information because she wanted to. She didn't need to
Mhm.
put it out there, didn't feel a need to. Um, some folks do want to, and that's their right as well.
Mhm. She actually she's quite brave. She's very she's very, very quiet on most days, and she's not very, like, she doesn't offer a whole lot of information, but when she decides that it's time to tell people something, she's quite brave. And she has, because she's my stepdaughter, so her mom has a massive family, just humongous, and they have this big, huge family Facebook group where they all message each other. It's kind of cool.
Hmm.
And she went in there, and she put in a big, like, long text post about, like, basically coming out, saying that I have a
Wow.
girlfriend and all this stuff. And I was like, I know her family, they're all great, they're all wonderful and accepting, loving people. But I was still, like, just nervous, but it was just overwhelming, like, care, love, support, and stuff like that.
Oh, isn't
And
that wonderful?
yeah, it's, I don't think that there was 1 ounce of somebody shaming her for it at all in her life. So
That's so
I'm glad.
terrific.
Yeah, I'm really glad. And I think that that speaks to the times that we're in. I think that she's definitely lucky that she's living in this time. And I know that both her father and I would, if we ever found out that anybody ever shamed her for that, there would be a little bit of hell to pay.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
but yeah, it's, you have to also, like, when it's your kid, you cannot push them. You can't push them into telling anybody that they don't want to tell. Like, they tell you, that
Oh,
doesn't mean that it's all of a sudden time for you to tell everybody else.
excellent
It's
point. Very
yeah,
important.
that is their decision. And it is, if they come to you and they say, "Can you help me tell my grandparents about this?" Then sure, then you have a place to help them. But
Yeah.
if they're not ready, you've got to listen to them. You've totally got to listen to them.
And in the case where the person wrote into us with that question, um, so you can ask your young person, ask your child, is that, do they want to talk about that? Maybe they have no interest in discussing their sexuality with their grandparents at all, which is certainly understandable. And if they do want to, because they feel it's an important aspect of their personhood and they want to be, just right up front with it, you can also discuss with them the potential ways that grandma and grandpa may react, and why they may react that way. So for some people, I've heard this definitely, especially for mothers of sons, when the sons have come out to them as gay or bisexual, there can be a real fear, and a legitimate fear, unfortunately, uh, that people might be unkind or even, try and harm their child just because they are different. And so sometimes that's the response that's coming out. It's coming from a place of fear. So you can talk about those things, and sometimes it's absolutely that they've been um, misinformed and indoctrinated by an archaic religion, and there's fear involved there. A lot of times, the people who are speaking out the loudest against it, guess what? They're the ones that are most fighting their own urges. They cannot handle the fact that um, sexuality is a spectrum, and they may be a little farther one way than they are comfortable with.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that I think that applies to religious belief as well. I think the loudest apologists have the biggest doubts. But
Mhm.
um I think that it's really important when you're worried about how the world might treat your LGBTQ plus child.
Mm.
The absolute best way to do that is to, like, we talk about, critical thought is an inoculation against indoctrination. You can also inoculate your kids against being susceptible to having their self-esteem knocked down by building them up at home. And that's not to say that things that happen outside of the home will not affect them, but the more you build them up at home, the more you make them understand their worth at home, the less likely they are going to be to doubt that worth when they're outside of the home. And so I think that's one of the things that's like the first place that you have to start in that specific question that you were asked, is by building up their worth and their value at home and ensuring that they have absolutely no doubts in their mind that their sexuality does not change that in any way, and that they're just as valuable if they love a woman, and they're just as valuable if they love a man, and it doesn't matter. Um, and as long as everybody's treating each other nicely and it's all consensual, none of that matters. And I think that's step one.
Yeah, I agree. And in some families, unfortunately, and I mean, even families where they never have been religious or espoused any sort of spiritual beliefs in that way, there can still be issues as far as bullying from the siblings. And
Yeah.
sibling bullying is very serious. It's it's a real issue, and it can have devastating consequences. So, yeah, as mom and dad are striving to make their child feel accepted and loved, they also need to be keeping an eye on siblings and what's going on there. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
love
a really good
really
point.
is just love.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good point too. Again, if you're creating an environment at home where everybody is accepted for who they are, then it shouldn't be a big problem, but you can still get, sibling kids are jerks. Like, kids can be jerks. And um, so yeah, definitely keep an eye on that. But again, you can help fight that by building them up at home and making sure that they know their worth. And like, that's a one of the things that my parents did with me. I was bullied in high school. I was kind of nerdy. I liked being on the student council and stuff like that. I just such a nerd. People would make fun of me and stuff like that, but it just never seemed to get to me because I knew that I was more valuable than they understood. Like, I knew that it was
Mhm,
their loss,
mhm,
and that's definitely 100% because my parents built me up at home. They told me every day that I had value, that I was smart, that I was, cute and funny and all of this stuff. And so I'd go out there and I didn't have any doubts that that's what I was.
oh, that's marvelous.
Yeah, and that's what we try to do with our son. We unfortunately didn't have our daughter here for her whole life as a child, but that's what we try to do with our son. And so far it seems to be good. And that's not to say that, like, sometimes things are still gonna get to you,
Mhm.
but I think that the more you're like I said before, the more you get built up at home, the less you're gonna doubt yourself. Especially
Yes.
even if it's your siblings.
Hmm. I find that religious, when religion is involved, love comes with conditions. Love
Yeah.
comes with a lot of strings attached. And it can be, I will love you as long as you're exactly the way that I think you're supposed to be, or as long as the way my interpretation of the Bible says that you should be, then I'll love you. So that's really hard then growing up in that environment, because then we tend to place those same conditions on ourselves. So in some cases, it is important that people leave their families behind. Some people really need to do that for their own mental health. If religion is making your family of origin toxic, there's no rule saying that you must maintain ties. You grew up together. You were in the same household for 20 years or whatever. That job is done. You've made it to adulthood. You're allowed to make your own choices and be who you are, and you do not have to maintain contact.
Yeah.
So, and that can, I think people don't take that lightly. People who end up having to cut their families off for their own health, a lot of times they've agonized over it. So I have a lot of respect for people who are that strong, that they're able to do that and put their own needs first. That could have been really helpful to me in a lot of instances, and I wasn't strong enough to do it at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point that love is conditional in a lot of religious families, and
Mm-hmm.
it's that's really, it's really sad. And with the case of the grandparents, and like if you accept your child when they come out and you're giving them a loving and nurturing environment, they still might have to face it with your parents. And I think the best way to go about dealing with that is for you to have a chat with them first, and clear it with your child first. Make sure that it's okay with them that
Mm-hmm.
you mention this stuff to them. And then you go have a chat with your family first, just to get an idea of how they're going to react. Because
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, like if my son's 12 and like he's still 6, he loves playing with toys and stuff like that. He's just
Oh, yeah.
he's a young 12, and but if he ever came to me and he said, that he has a boyfriend or something like that, I had religious, if I had religious family, I would go to them and I would say, okay, this is what's going on, and I want to know how you feel about it. And if they showed any signs of being toxic about it, I would not let him go and try to talk to them about
Mm-hmm.
it. I would
Mm-hmm.
I would tell them that unless and until you're ready to face this with love and compassion and accept him the way that he is, that you're not going to hang out with him, you're not going to be around him. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's the end of it.
I
And
love that because that is you're showing respect for your child by, getting their permission to talk to grandma and grandpa. But then you're also showing a measure of respect to grandma and grandpa. It's that, in some ways that's a bombshell to drop, right? At a family gathering, like you're all sitting there at Thanksgiving and there's nowhere to escape to or to go while you're trying to process the information.
mm,
um, it is kinder perhaps to have a private moment with them first, to let them know what's coming, and to, so like you say, get a feel of how they're responding, and to make very sure they understand, here's the boundaries as far as my child goes. I
yeah.
think that's really wise. You're a wise counselor.
Well, I was raised by a wise counselor.
Yeah, that's right, your dad.
He's a little bit of a nutter now, though.
We won't
he
talk about
doesn't
that.
he doesn't mind if I say that.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I think that my consideration in that is, I I would just be devastated if he went into that toxic situation and there were tears and broken hearts and stuff like that. Like that would just, I don't want my child to ever have to feel as though he's hurting anybody just because of who he loves. So uh, I would not be able to cope with that. I would be so mad. And something that I don't think a lot of the people who read my blog and subscribe to me on YouTube and stuff like that really know is that I I can have a temper. I can have a really, if you piss me off, I will let you know. And they I just, I could not let my child go into that situation. I couldn't do it without ensuring that it's going to turn out okay. And that would be the end of it for me. And I think that if your parents care enough about you and their relationship with you, and if they care enough about your child and their relationship with your child, then they're going to do as you ask. They're going to just say, we support you, we love you no matter what. Um, but if they don't, then you haven't put your child in that situation where they then feel like 2 inches tall and like they've lost all their value. I could not put my child in that situation.
It does. There definitely are parallels when we talk about coming out. It's in the deconverted or deconstructing religious community, people who've left religion, we actually use that phrase too, coming out. Have you come out to your family yet, that you are no longer religious. Um, so there are similarities there, and we know that coming out to that's funny. If we know that coming out as non-religious in, say, Muslim circles could definitely get you killed, and then potentially also coming out as gay in those same um, circles. But yeah, people, and we have touched on this before, something that you think is great news is not necessarily great news to people who have a completely different mindset. And sometimes their first reaction is not necessarily the reaction that they wanted to disclose to you. Sometimes just a little bit of time is necessary, and that's also why I would say to this letter writer, talk to your folks first with your child's permission to let them know, because they may really think it's a terrible thing because they're worried about your child not going to heaven or whatever the thing is they're worried about, but they may be able to overcome that because they love your child so much and they do just want to be in your child's life. So yeah, it's a tricky one, that's for sure. It's a hot issue.
Yeah, I think somebody in the chat right at the beginning of this mentioned that some people, despite the fact that they have religious families, their religious families put their love of their family members above their religion, and I think that that's a really important point. That I don't think, like, the thing that always kind of crosses my mind when it comes to this is, if you love your family member who happens to be a member of the LGBTQ plus community, if you love that family member as they are, you support them as they are, and you're compassionate towards them, and you don't judge them, what God worth worshiping would punish you for that? Like, I'm just curious. How is a God who would punish you for that worth worshiping? Do
Mm-hmm.
you not have any standards for yourself? Like, I do not understand that. I don't get it.
Well, the
Makes no
Bible
sense.
definitely talks about both loving God and worshiping God, but also fearing God. And to me, those don't go well together. It's
No.
hard to love someone that I fear. Like then my love doesn't feel like it's I mean, it's pretty difficult if
Yeah.
you're in constant fear from someone. So yeah, but people who are entrenched in that mindset, it's very hard. They're not ready yet often to be able to take another perspective or see another perspective, and fundamentalists especially. I mean,
Yeah.
so people, maybe folks who are grew up United Church or Anglican or something like that, where it's kind of it's more formal, but it's less personal. But evangelicalism is like very personal. You got a personal relationship with this non-existent deity. But it's so personal to the point that when I walked away from that religion, I felt that there had been a death, even though if there is no God, but to me, that non-existent God had been the central part of my identity and my life. So,
Yeah.
religion, no
That's
thanks.
how so many people have described it to me
Mm-hmm.
before. Like, it's grief. People grieve
Yes.
their religion
Mm-hmm.
when they
Yeah.
lose it.
And there are different types of grief. There's a kind of an ambiguous loss where there's no body. Like say, unfortunately, if someone dies in a plane crash or something like that, you don't have a body to bury, or they get kidnapped,
Yeah.
and there's no, but you're still grieving. And then there's other types of grief that aren't sanctioned by society, because society doesn't understand it or
Yeah.
approve of it or whatever. So there are different types of grief that come into play when we're grieving the loss of our faith, for sure. And again, having a supportive group, really important. And that's why I want people to take my divorcing religion workshop online,
Mhm.
because that way you do have a supportive group right there while you're deconstructing.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely recommend that. Um, One of the things I think with the whole grandparent situation and your kid coming out is that I think that you need to be prepared to walk away, just like we talked about last time when we were talking about how to deal with overbearing religious family and or how to deal with the QAnon family. It seems to be a recurring pattern here, but you have to be prepared to to lose that connection because you have like you're the parent and your child comes first in that situation. You don't need to cling to toxic members of your family even if they're not necessarily, if they've never been toxic towards you before, and it's only coming out in with respect to your child, being a member of the LGBTQ plus community, then it's still a toxic relationship and it's still something that you need to be willing to let go of. And when you think about it, like it's painful in the moment. It's painful in the moment to say goodbye to somebody and to miss them and all of that, but it's more painful in the long run if you keep that person in your life. And it creates more tension. It can cause so much tension in you that it can then create a rift between you and your child, and it's just not a good situation. You need to know when you are hurting your child by keeping that person in your life, and like I said before, just you've got to protect that child from that type of thinking. It's on its way out, right?
Yeah.
Like we've established that our children don't care about this stuff. They're just like,
Hmm.
whatever, she has a girlfriend, I don't
Hmm.
care.
Yeah.
um but it's on its way out.
Hmm.
And I think that right now it's important to protect your child from people like that while building them up because I mean the truth is they're going to encounter someone in their life who's
Right.
going to be hateful about it. So they
Yep.
need to be able to know their own worth despite that. But there's
Yes.
no reason why you should be voluntarily putting your child in a situation that's toxic like that.
And I mean, another layer to this, specifically, I'm thinking of Christianity because that's my experience. The notion of forgiveness is so heavy. It is like it's demanded of you when you are a Christian, but maybe in other religions as well. And I really take issue with that because forgiveness um, is a choice. It's 100% optional. Forgiveness is something that is easily weaponized by perpetrators of abuse. But even walking away from religion, it can take people a while before they maybe give themselves that freedom to know, you know what, I don't have to forgive so and so. I absolutely don't have to. What we have to do is accept what has happened, the reality of whatever the situation is that's taken place. We're going to accept that because that's necessary for our growth. Um, but that doesn't mean then that we also have to forgive them for whatever they did, whatever was done to us. That's 100% your choice. You get to decide,
Yeah.
and that's
The
something that people have trouble with even when they do leave religion.
Yeah, I imagine so. There's something that I've always thought about too is like when people are a great deal older. Um like my friend, she never came out to her grandmother, one of her grandmothers, because her grandmother was so old. There was no point. Like
Yeah.
she was so set in her ways, you know? So I think that in some cases it's maybe not worth the fight to even bring it up with that person, you know? And that's how I felt with some things that my grandma also believed in and stuff like that. It was just there was no point in arguing with her because she was just she's I mean, women when we get old, we get stubborn. But she was not gonna change her mind about anything, and all it does is just create tension in the family and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So there's some things that I was willing to let go of. And so I think that you should also be able to give your child the option of just not even telling them if they don't want to.
Mhm.
Because it might not be again, it's not really relevant. Like why do you need to tell your grandma who you sleep with. I don't know.
And not everyone needs to know, and not everyone deserves to know, because not
Yeah.
everyone's going to be safe with that information. And certainly, if you are concerned about how the parents will react, and or the grandparents will react, and the young person still, it's really important to them to go ahead and tell. Um, then you're going to be preparing that young person for potential responses that they might get, and also be ready to use things as a teachable moment and as a learning opportunity, because as you said just a few minutes ago, they are going to encounter someone
Yeah.
somewhere along the way that maybe they're not related to, but who disagrees with how they are living, and who will think it's their business and will start preaching at them against it. And so, as you've said, really building them up at home from the time they're born is a big key to helping strengthen them against that.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest learning experiences too when you're a parent is knowing that the sorts like figuring out the sorts of things that can cut a child down. It's not always obvious. It's not always the easiest to recognize when you're doing something that cuts them down or belittles them in some way, and just being really hyper aware of how you talk to them, how you treat them. And like one of the ways that I like to approach my child is as an equal. Obviously, I still make the rules around here. Can't have M&Ms for dinner, but um we we treat him as an equal. Like we'll talk to him like he is an adult. We don't baby things down for him and stuff like that. At least things that we think that he can handle at this age and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But there's so many ways that you can cut a child down, and just be super aware of the way that you talk about things. And also remember that they're watching even when you're sure they're not. They
Yeah.
are so observant, and they see how you treat other people. They might
Mhm.
see how you comment on things on Facebook.
Yeah.
They see whether or not you accept your friend's same-sex relationship. All of those things can they can make a child not want to tell you their truth. If they feel like if they see you cut somebody else down because they're in a same-sex relationship, they may not feel safe telling you that they are attracted to the same sex. And
Mhm.
so, as I said earlier in the show, you have to set the example. Like my parents never sat me down and said, "Okay, here's the LGBTQ plus community. You have to treat them as equals." Instead, they just showed me that we treat people as equals, that we love everybody equally, no matter who they love, no matter what part of life they come from or where they live or anything like that. And so yeah, be super hyper aware of how you're treating other people, even when you think your kids aren't watching.
Yes, and that actually goes for religious relatives too. Our children hear how we talk about those religious relatives. And if we're calling them names, and if we're calling them stupid or ignorant or something, just using unkind words, when we could be saying things like they are indoctrinated. They
Mhm.
were vulnerable at some point in their life to this belief system, and now it's really taken root in them, and is kind of moving them along in a direction that we feel very uncomfortable with. But it doesn't mean that they're dumb or stupid. We still care about this person, but right now it may not be safe to have that person um, really close to us in this family unit. So, yeah, hard things.
Yeah, that's also a really, really, really good point. Is just not being hateful at home. It's
Mhm.
especially when you're frustrated about something, it can be really difficult to watch how you're expressing that frustration with other people in front of your kids. But you have to be just aware of the fact that if you show in any way that you can't accept people who are different, then your child may feel scared to tell you that they're different. And that's just that's why I'm really glad that, you know, like when our daughter told us that she had a girlfriend, we were happy about it, and we made sure that our son saw how happy we were about it, so that he knows that no matter what he might have to tell us one day, that we're going to be open and supportive about it. And I always try to catch myself before I complain about people who I find really irritating and frustrating and stuff like that. um, and a few times he's come home from school and mentioned somebody saying something about religion, and he's kind of rolled his eyes or something like that. And I'll explain to him, I'll be like, you have to try and understand that this is what they were taught, this is what their
Mhm.
parents told them, this is all they know. Just try to
Mhm.
be understanding about it. And I
Mhm.
hope that that's how he grows up, that he grows up just trying to put his himself in everybody else's shoes when he finds himself amongst people he doesn't really understand.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think too, um, exploring and discussing that the idea of morality, because that's what people are. That's where judgments are coming from. If they're making a moral judgment that, oh, you know, you want to have sex with someone that's the same sex as you, and so that's bad. That's morally depraved. Um, it's important to talk about those things, the idea of morality and what makes a good person and this sort of thing. Talk about that with your kids from the time they're little. I mean, in age appropriate ways. But I think those are also some great family discussions to have.
Yeah, yeah, something that we've always said to our kids was that's what we're about. Like, I always explained to him about, like, how my grandfather was he was an ambulance driver in a POW camp in Jamaica, and he won medals for being super kind and, just being a real humanitarian with the prisoners and treating them with respect. And then my dad, who was my grandfather's son, he had all these nonprofits, and he worked with sex workers and just all kinds of crazy jobs helping people. And he founded the crisis center in my hometown, and just stuff that didn't pay anything because we were poor, but he he helped a
Wow.
lot of people. And then I told him, you know, like, I try to follow in my dad's footsteps by helping people in any way that I can. And um and I said, that's what we are about. That's what our name means. That's what our
Oh,
family is about,
that's
is
so
helping people.
beautiful.
And we talk
Oh.
about that with respect to bullying, because sometimes he'll get frustrated with his friends or something like that, or something will happen and he'll tell me that he said something or did something, and I'll be like, that's not how we handle those situations. And we try to be understanding. We try to do this and we try to do that. And that's how we talk to him about it.
Oh, that is so lovely. That's just wonderful. Sometime I want to hear that story about your grandfather being the ambulance driver. That sounds really interesting. I feel like people would be interested in hearing more about that.
He was an atheist too.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I noticed that our time is running down. I did want to just
Oh
mention that
yeah.
tomorrow morning, tomorrow's Valentine's Day, I have the privilege of addressing the Nashville Sunday Assembly. So that is going to be fun, and I'm going to be talking all about sex. And so I think that
Ooh.
will be a great time. So if you're so inclined, join us on the Nashville Sunday Assembly group.
We should have an episode about sex sometime soon.
Oh, I concur. I'm a fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should talk about it. That would be good.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a good episode. Leave a comment down below if that's what you want to hear from us next time. And yeah, I guess that's basically it then. With that question, we had several questions lined up. We ended up talking about this one the whole time. Um, but basically, support your child at home, set a good example at home, and get permission from your child to talk to your parents about it first, and then kind of test the waters. And if they seem like they're going to be toxic about it, shut it down. Just shut it down. That's it. That's the best advice that I think we can put out there as far as that question goes.
I concur. I hope everybody's enjoyed their time with us today. I have. I
Yeah,
hope you have.
me too. So thank you very much for listening. Make sure that you, if you're on the YouTubes watching this, subscribe and hit the bell, and then you're going to get a notification when we go live. And make sure that you also soon, in the next couple of days, we're going to be on iTunes. We're already on Google Podcasts, so you can go listen to us there. We are
Cool.
on Stitcher and all those other podcast things. So if you want to listen to the audio only version, my husband actually wrote us a song, so you can hear our intros
Yay!
on there. And down in the description down below, you can go to the podcast page and you can submit your question for future episodes, as well as buy a Godless Moms t-shirt.
I'm so
Yeah.
excited. Mm-hmm.
So next week we will be back on Saturday at noon, and if that changes, we'll post announcements everywhere. But for now, Saturday at noon. We'll see you then. Thanks
All
for
right.
joining us.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye.